With me this week is David Hallett from Archicentre and Robert Larocca from the REIV. Today we're talking about renovating. Should you sell or renovate? And can you make a profit from renovating? David, can you make a profit from renovating?
Look, you can, Katrina, if you go about it very carefully. And our message to anyone who's thinking of renovating for fun and profit is to know exactly why you're going about it and to get some early advice. If you're renovating a home to make a profit, you're actually a property developer, and you may not think of yourself as a property developer, but that's effectively what you're doing. And no self-respecting property developer is going to embark on any sort of development without doing a feasibility study first.
And what do you mean by a feasibility study?
Well, we're really talking about getting both sides of the equation together for analysis before you go forward and do any work. First of all, the cost side, what are you proposing to do? What's the plan of attack and how much is it all likely to cost you? And on the other side, of course, what return might you get if you go ahead with that work? And by that we mean what sort of sale price could you perhaps expect? And the advice you'd get obviously would be from a selling agent if you were to do that work.
And Robert, what's your take? Can you make a profit from renovating?
No doubt you can, but you've really got to weigh it up against what you want in your life. I mean, we often say if you're looking at renovating, why don't you renovate to live in the property for a couple of years, enjoy the wonderful new kitchen or the better family room you've made, and then look to sell. In some respects, to go down the path of renovating, going to all that expense and trouble, because it does take time out of your life and can cause stress, you may as well do that and enjoy it. I mean, otherwise you can go through all that stress and not get the gain at the end. Or.
And David, how do you decide what to do in your renovation?
Well, just picking up on Robert's point, first of all, it is very important to understand why you're renovating. Are you renovating for profit or are you renovating for longer term family lifestyle benefit? Because they're two very different reasons to embark on a renovation project, and certainly in our view it's important to be very, very clear on which of those camps you fall into, because you should be making very different decisions if you're renovating with the intention of selling the property on completion, perhaps within months of completing the work and hoping to make $1, compared to a renovation that might see you remaining in the property for 5 or 10 or 15 or more years.
I think you ultimately reduce the risk you enter into if you renovate to live in for a couple of years, if it's just for you and your family, because you get the enjoyment out of that and you don't go through the circumstance of offering it for sale in a couple of months and finding that at the same time there's lots of similar properties out there and it's much harder for you to get the financial benefit from that renovation.
And say you are trying to make a profit, what are some of the best things to renovate within a property?
Well, you've got to think very carefully about where you're spending the money and obviously how much you're spending as well. And the sorts of things that we would encourage people to consider is less wet area upgrades and things like swimming pools, for example. You might do those if you were intending to stay in the property for a period of time. But if you're looking to sell more or less on completion, we'd be suggesting that people first of all fix any building faults. They're going to be a negative for any purchaser if they come into the property. You might have upgraded the bathroom, you might have rendered the building, that's very common these days, but if it needed restumping from the very beginning, that might have been a better way to spend your money. So fixing building faults, stumps, roof leaks, those sorts of things. Focusing on the front of the house, the front garden, the front fence, the front facade, front veranda, front porch, all of these things are going to make a great difference to a first impression if you're listing the property for sale as soon as you've finished the work. Cosmetic upgrades internally, repainting, papering, decorating, carpeting, floor coverings, those sorts of things are going to be low cost but maximal impact sorts of things that you can do if you're looking to get that money back quickly.
There's a bit of a balance there between renovating, and when we think of renovating, often it's rip out the kitchen and put a new one in, right through to changing the cosmetic presentation of your property to make it more inviting. And so there's quite a range of choices there that sellers have if they're looking to renovate.
You may have spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a new kitchen and bathroom that actually isn't to the market's taste.
Well, that can happen, can't it? You design it for what you like, but other people may not like it.
And that's one of the key differences between renovating for profit and renovating for yourself and your family.
You also have to take into account, land. People always say location, location, location when it comes to real estate, and there's a lot of truth in that, because people will pay for the land, for the location, often more so than the property itself. I mean, sometimes when you buy a new home, you see buyers go through and they go, oh, we want a new one of these and we'll renovate here. And they often look at that property and think about how they can change it for their own needs, which If that's the case and you've just done the kitchen, then you've probably done your dough, because they're looking at the property through the prism of its location and what they can get out of it for themselves. So you have to understand the wider context where you're developing or renovating and why, and talk to the agent about what the other properties in the area are like, and look yourself too.
That's right. People will often want to make a mark on a home that they've purchased, and kitchens and bathrooms are one of the two areas where they do want to spend some money and create something very personal for themselves. So to do that for them could have the impact of alienating a number of buyers.
And where can you get advice about this, David? Who can actually come to your house and say, yes, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't do that?
Well, certainly architects and Archicentre can provide advice around what you can do, and we can provide concept designs, and we can provide cost estimates around the sorts of works that you might like to consider. In terms of the other side of the equation, though, the return on that investment, then we'd always be recommending advice from a local agent, ideally the agent that perhaps sold you the property in the first place.
I've used Archicentre for that exact purpose, to come in and look at the house that we had and tell us what needed doing, and it was really critical in making the decision for us about whether we stayed where we were and renovated, or we moved. And in the end we moved, because the cost was not going to be worth the return to us, or the effort and the emotional energy that it was going to involve, but may have worked for somebody else.
That's often when people start thinking about renovating, isn't it? When they actually are wondering whether they should move or stay and renovate.
Because you're weighing up your options. You think, what do I want in my house? I mean, 70% of people buy homes to live in, and so they look at the house and go, what do I want in this house? And do I have it here, or can I get it elsewhere? You've got to weigh up those options, and including taking into effect all the things that David suggested about what the costs are, but also at an emotional level as well. Because if you've ever met anyone going through a renovation with their family in the house, it can be a very difficult time, and you may not want to do that.
Yeah. Do people actually make money renovating though, as a job? As a
Look, they can do if they've developed some skills at it, and those skills will be all about buying in the right location in the first place, and spending money very, very sensibly in the areas in which they're going to get maximum impact and maximum return on every dollar that they've spent.
I mean, they're property developers, like you said at that point. The moment you're starting to do it on a serial basis, you're a property developer, and then there's everybody else who is just living in their homes because they need a house to live in.
And it's worth considering, and clearly we're not here to provide financial advice, but it's worth considering the tax implications of some of these things too, because if it's your family home, it's free from capital gains tax, but of course if it's an investment property, it's going to attract capital gains. So you've got to understand some of these things as well if you're a property developer.
So renovating your own house, which is capital gains tax free, could have a benefit rather than choosing an investment property.
Oh, it can be a great benefit. I mean, I think it would be pretty hard not to make money out of a renovation longer term. It's those people who are trying to make money quickly by renovating and selling a property quite quickly after they finish the work that can come unstuck.
Yep.
If you go down that path, not only do you have to take into account all of the building and development costs and the risks associated, but the stamp duty too, because if you're buying to, as they describe, flick the property later, then you've got to add 30 or 40 grand just to the initial purchase price, which is a big hurdle to jump if you want to make some money out of it.
And these are the sorts of questions that property developers ask themselves all the time. They wouldn't be in that business, or so they certainly wouldn't be successful in that business if they didn't ask themselves these questions. So for anyone thinking of renovating for profit, they need to put that property developer's hat on and think the way a property developer thinks if they're going to do it properly.
Thank you very much. That's all we've got time for this week.